So we're in for quite a treat today. We don't just have one, but we have a whole panel of speakers. So as many of you know, we've had a collaboration with Kaiser Permanente, and in particular the Data Information and Management Enhancement Group, related to analytics. And there was a course we taught last summer, and we'll be offering it again this summer. And we're lucky enough to have them come in today, several members from the group, to speak about not just what they're doing with analytics at Kaiser, but also some career opportunities and some ways to think about that. And there'll be a panel. So the interactive piece is, of course, encouraged. Please remember, we are live streaming this, so if you do have questions, please remember to hold while you're asking the question so it's recorded, and more importantly, so that people out in the internet can hear. I will also be monitoring on Twitter, and if you are watching this on live stream, you can send us questions to @OHSU Informatics, and the hashtag is DMICEConf, C-O-N-F, and we will make sure that your questions get answered.
Great, thanks for having us. My name is Allison Schmidt. I lead the development of BI and Analytics team in our department that really have accountability for data marts and reporting. Go ahead and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. I'll kind of have to pass this around. We're just to give you a little hint on the agenda. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about how our department's structured, the roles and responsibilities. I see some familiar faces, so if this is a repeat from last time you were here, I apologize. I'll highlight some of the open positions we have. Keith is going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the work efforts that we're doing currently to drive forward improvements, efficiency, and quality in our Kaiser Permanente Northwest region. And then we have a great panel of our analysts that, actually do all the great work. So those projects will tie to a lot of the work that they're doing. So you can ask them both questions about what their role is like, what's our group like, what's Kaiser like, but more importantly, the kind of projects that we're working on. Keith will kind of tee that up too. So any questions about our agenda today? Got a couple of handouts. If you haven't picked them up, we can hand one to you. One is the roles grid. I'll be walking us through some of that. And then the seminar that was mentioned, we kind of put a little blurb about that. I'm not sure if these dates are exactly correct, so when you go sign up, validate the dates based on the catalog itself. But the description, the intent of the course is all in alignment. So just wanted to highlight those. Does anybody need a copy? Okay, of which ones? Both? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so hand it off to Keith.
Hello. My name's Keith Crowland. I'm an information analyst manager. So I have a team of analysts, information analysts largely, which is more our kind of broad consulting analyst role. We work more closely with the frontline operations on a whole range of different applications. And so I'm now going to hand it over to the team. Do you want to make sure you explain the area?
Right. So my name is Sean Flerschinger. I'm one of those information analysts that he mentioned. And although we have a broad range, I'm actually focused in two areas: population health, where we deal with reviewing chronic conditions, weight management, and a lot of cancer care. And then the other half of my role is the Regional Telephonic Medical Center, which basically the focus there was they had a data tool that wasn't meeting their needs, and so we worked towards a data tool where we can pull data and get them accurate review of what all the work they're doing, and they can show the business that now. So.
Hi, my name is Jun Song. I'm one of the information analysts. My focus area is clinical quality and population health. So this role deals a lot of case management, disease-based, and also medical 5-star, and there's a lot of patient outreach and intervention going on. And there's also another area involves employer group health and wellness. So this is a new strategy in our region. That's a lot of exciting work to do.
My name is Lucas K. Womack. I'm a BSA team lead. I'm actually on the prod support team. It's my main area of focus. I help build software for team tool efficiencies. I help look at new technologies, and in general, I'm a technology advocate.
Hi, I'm Karen Brooks, and I'm a report analyst within the team. I've worked in various areas of the group focusing on hospital, surgical services, ambulatory care at one point, and the biggest, and finance, the biggest role of the report analyst is to basically find ways to take all the information that's out there and present it in a way that can be actionable. So that's kind of the focus of the RA.
I think I'm going to have to hold this, so thank you. Thanks for having us. So these guys represent 3 of the 4 roles that you'll find on this sheet. The role that we do not have is data analyst. I also lead that team, so I can talk through that with you. Our DIME department has grown over the years in size, but we actually haven't grown in FTEs. So in the Northwest, Kaisers is huge. We have 200,000 employees, about 11,000 in the Northwest region. We're close to 500,000 members. And overall in the nation, we're over 10 million members. So we have a huge structure. In the Northwest region alone, we all sit on the health plan side, which is the ambulatory care operations, nurses, MAs, practitioners, as well as all of our insurance, sales, marketing, membership, all of the support structures. But then we have our Permanente partnership, which is our physicians. So they're kind of the backbone of what we do because we treat patients, but obviously it's a strong partnership. So over the years, DIME has, what we've done is we've actually centralized analysts. So we used to have analysts that sat in individual areas and they were kind of on their own. And we've brought people in from those specific areas into the broader DIME team structure, and that helps us get efficiency of process, clarity of work. They can collaborate and share more closely than if they were a single analyst kind of siloed in one area. It also allows a lot of job opportunity and growth. So we have an information analyst lead at the hospital that started out on my team as a data analyst 2 into a data analyst 3 and then jumped over the information analyst role. So having that kind of consolidated structure allows that ability for team members to move through different job families too. So we support a broad area of health plan operations. You heard some of them here. I mean, this is everything from I need to sign up as a member to I want to call and make a complaint to I need to make an appointment to I'm in the appointment room, what are my care gaps, to helping the groups that we support understand what those care gaps are with their groups themselves, wide spectrum. So we probably support over 45 different subjects. We have over 2,000 users of our products, so kind of a broad spectrum. I'll try to give you a taste of what that really means in terms of roles today. So the first is business systems analyst. Luke is the lead of the business systems team. This is all about technology and systems and entry of information. So in your world, it's applications. In our world, we also have Epic analysts, so everybody entering information into our health record. We have application coordinators, which play the business systems analyst role. But on our team, the business systems analysts focus on our own tools. So our request process, our production ticket issues, our tree, we manage hierarchies, some of those tools that manage those trees. So our business systems analysts are all about tools and data entry. The next is the data analyst role. This role is really focused on building data structures. They could be marts, they could be a mini warehouse, they could be just a set of tables that are used for a specific analysis. But the data analysts really need to understand about how to go get data from different systems, how to structure that data so that it can be used and consumed for analytics. The value we really bring is trying to bring data across systems. So every request we have may need data from 4 different systems. So their role is really to help go out and understand what that data is, normalize it, bring it into a structure that can be used by the other analysts. Karen mentioned report analysts. Report analysts take information and create it so that it can be presented. We use SAS and Cognos BI extensively within our team. We have a couple of new tools that are emerging, particularly Tableau. Tableau has its advantages. It has its drawbacks in terms of drawing on the database. But report analysts use a variety of tools, and they structure graphs, charts, consumable information, help prepare self-service query studios for our end users to use so that people can go out and drag and drop information. So it's kind of information on demand, but yet it's specific to their needs for one-time purpose. And then finally, our largest group is our information analysts. And this is the area where we used to have people just starting. I think when we started out, we had 2 information analysts on the DIME team. We now have over 20. So these people have subject matter expertise within an area. So Sean focused on regional telephonic medical center. June on population health. We have other analysts that focus on member relations, call center, ED. So these are people that go really deep into a subject area. They tee up a lot of the work that goes to the report analysts and data analysts because we have less of them, so they can't go as deep in a subject, so we draw on that subject matter expertise in an area. I know one question that has been really key is what skills do you look for? So it's always a tough question because not every team member is the same, and we have a variety of skills and strengths within our team, but certainly you need to have a really strong base in SQL, some kind of tool. I know you guys do some R. For us, we look for SAS. We need database backgrounds, so Oracle, Teradata are two of our main database types. We really look for people that can take ambiguity and draw that into specific, actionable information. We have a lot of business owners that aren't analytical. They kind of think they know what they want to do, but they don't really know. So they may come through requests, and we've got to guide them through that to try to really get to what they're trying to do, evolve. So there's the consultative piece to it that goes in, sort of that well-rounded skill set to be able to talk people through situations, present information, round trip, look for feedback. But certainly a baseline of SQL is important, and the healthcare background is really key, but not essential. We've got people from many other industries. Obviously, there's a ramp up of healthcare, but we've been able to kind of skill up people in that area through cross-training as well. So I'm not going to read this in detail. I know for the people on the WebEx, you don't have this. That will be posted with this online. But as we go through, if you have questions about this, what this means, we've got people in those role sets. June and Sean are both information analysts. Luke's the BSA. Karen's the report analyst. I can represent the data analyst. But certainly I think it makes more sense when we start talking about the kind of projects we do and what their role was on that project. Probably makes more sense. So any questions before we dive into the project work and kind of the panel? Questions about the sheet and how it's laid out? Okay, thank you.
Does that work? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, good. So I'm going to talk through 3 projects to kind of really tee up the panel session, to give a little bit of context, and it may be within those, certainly in terms of maybe the answers or the questions, and also to give a flavor of some of the things that we work on. These are bigger or longer term efforts, as opposed to there's a lot of lower level consulting, there's a lot of ad hoc type work going on. So these are this isn't necessarily representative of all the work, but I think they're interesting projects. So the first one, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, is the work that Sean's been doing with the Regional Telephonic Medical Center. And so this is where we have nurses and doctors basically giving a treatment and advice over the phone. So we have a nursing advice line, which is a key kind of part of our whole delivery model, as well as the doctors that are on call for a whole number of different things, but tends to be taking over management of patients that are outside our direct system and maybe repatriating them, but managing that whole process. And so from an analytics point of view, and this would have been a couple of years back, the workflows and how they were using Health Connect, which is the Epic system, together with their other systems, and we see this a lot, it had kind of just evolved over time. There wasn't necessarily a strategy to say, well, how are we going to extract information on the back end to give that kind of secondary use for a whole raft of things that we want to do, but ensure that we've got the right data quality. It's kind of built through a much more ad hoc process, and what tends to happen then is they want to come and do some studies. They want to look at, okay, let's build some metrics, maybe because we want to look at throughput, or we want to analyze things. We want to analyze what happens to these patients after, and we find information's in text fields. It's not recorded in the same place. It's not recorded consistently. So really, we don't have the breadth to be able to go in and try and kind of mine and put that to fix that data on the back end. So what happened in this circumstance, it was a project really to review the whole front end processes But what was really important was involving analysts working more on the back end to be able to say, how do we want to structure all the workflows? How do we want to structure the information coming in, which is going to give us the highest quality data coming out the back? So they really had buy into the metrics. And so Sean was working with the team, and I think Tracy was working before that, was really to how they were configuring the front end, testing the information on the back end, fine-tuning that so that we're going from a situation where they really didn't have any reliable metrics or an information source on the back end that certainly within our team we would want to link with lots of other parts of the system, but be able to do that in a consistent kind of manner. So it's kind of like a data quality, but it's really saying we're filling those gaps and bringing forward information. And certainly a lot of the skills from an information analyst point of view is connecting the front-end processes with the information we pull on the back end. So really important knowledge of the workflows, exactly the decision-making that goes on when the data is coming in is absolutely key in terms of analyzing the information on the back end. You need the technical skills, but those are you can acquire the technical skills, but if you don't really have the subject matter expertise to be able to do that. And so if you have questions about that, Sean's your man. The second project is really came out of work that June was doing. She was in my team at the time around in the population health area. This was an area where there was growing demands within the organization to do a lot more, because in Kaiser, with our integrated system, we have a very rich set of data on our members. Everything that happens to them, pretty much within the healthcare environment, we can map that through their health record number. And so when we're looking at managing populations, rather than sort of managing the process and efficiency side of healthcare, great opportunity to find those more complex patients, or to go in and do disease management around diabetics or whatever it is, to be able to understand all those different pieces. A growing area, huge demand, but from efficiency's point of view, lots of, or maybe a series of ad hoc analyses, and it's saying, we need to probably try and build more of an infrastructure here to support this type of work. And there was kind of two ways of looking at it. So if you think about, we've got, say, roughly 500,000 members, and I think there was up to, 125 different metrics. So these are, could be utilization, but could also be disease markers, lots of different things, but it's more like a picture of a patient, on a record. And being able to use that to drill down and define subpopulations, to do outreach and really work with the clinical quality folks, but also measuring clinical quality at the group level. So this is the employee group level. So it's the same underlying data, but we want to use it, one, to actually go out and manage patients directly, but also to monitor a lot of it. And a lot tend to be those quality measures for those groups. And out of that came a project which we call Project Treehouse. I'm not entirely sure where that came from or what it's supposed to mean, but it was a cross-functional effort, and this was interesting for our team because it was Dime team as a whole, a different way of approaching it. We tried to do a kind of rapid week development. We made a lot of progress in there. We didn't quite get exactly where we wanted to be, but I think we covered a lot of ground. And June was really more the forward-facing with the customers, and Luke was heavily involved as well from a technology point of view in saying, this is the structure of the data, what kind of technology solutions can we use to actually analyze and work with that data. So that's the second project. I'm doing pretty good. And then the last one is more of a kind of finance type focus, but has analytics going kind of right down to a very detailed level, which is, it's really kind of productivity. We also call it unit of service, flex budgeting. So this is the idea of, and the work that started was, Karen was involved with the project, I was involved with the project for our hospital system, using external benchmarks, which really are measuring volume throughputs of departments. So it can be, for a nursing unit, it's going to be like equivalent patient days. If it was the EVS folks, then it's going to be pounds of laundry, whatever it is. But it's a way of saying we have loads of data, but how do we really focus managing our departments? So one is in terms of getting accurate measurements of those, being able to use benchmarking, external benchmarking information that really says, well, how are we doing? Are we good, bad, or indifferent? But then having that information used in a regular reporting cycle to really drive change within those groups. big project. It was kind of similar things have been tried before, but I think one of the unique things that we brought was really trying to separate parts of the process out. So on the finance side, where the data was very stable, and we already had BI-type reporting solutions, we wanted to really use and leverage that infrastructure we already had in place. But what we found was, when you've got to go to every single department across, and ideally they're going to do it across the whole system, and come up with a measure for output. So you're working with respiratory therapists at the hospital, and you're trying to come up with a definition of what they do and summarizing it down to one number. There's huge challenges there on the business rules side. And so what we found is you need much more flexibility on the business rules side, where the finance data is much more structured. So we had this idea of what we've called above the line, below the line. So the above the line is the information analysts working very closely with the operations to really come down and come up with all those different volumetrics. And a lot of this is coming out of Epic, essentially on the back end, but then working on a process where we can marry that up with the kind of industrial strength reporting and structure that we have already with our finance data, but using the same tools in terms of Cognos to take out self-service tools. So that's a really exciting, lots of different things. And for Kaiser, the fact that it's using external benchmarks and a way of measuring our business started in the Northwest. It's now been adopted in California, certainly within the hospital. But long-term is a strategy for basically day-to-day management of the resources within the organization. Really exciting analytical project. I want to end it there, so I'm now going to pass it over to these guys. If you have any other more questions about any of those examples, but we can deal with that through the panel. But without further ado, I guess I'll hand it over to you. I'll hand it over to you guys in terms of Q&A.
I guess I'll start with an easy one. What is Cognos? I'm not familiar.
Karen, do you want to? Do you have the?
Sorry, at home people. Is this on? Yeah. So. The light on. Yes, nobody home. All right. So, what am I doing? Yeah. Okay. So, Cognos is one BI tool or business intelligence tool. There's a lot of tools out there. You may have heard of Business Objects or Crystal or SAS, or there's a lot of different ones, right? So, Cognos is one that's an enterprise solution, kind of a counterpart to Business Objects, if you know that. And it's a tool that allows us to develop and present reporting within a web environment. So it has tools within the Cognos application that allow you to develop those reports, and then the Cognos web application allows them to present out the reports so that end users can go in there and click and run a report and have prompts and that kind of thing. So that's basically it.
It also allows you to multi-dimensionalize your data, so it handles multi-dimensional models.
A little bit more about the data normalization you do, like what? I was wondering if you can. Does this come through? I can't tell. Anyway, could you say a little bit more about the data normalization? Like, what types of problems are you trying to solve with data normalization? Also, what type of techniques and what types of compromises are you making, like for some of the problems you typically run into? Yeah.
So I'll address this one because it's a great question. It's never easy. So we have 56 plus source systems in the Northwest region alone. So our where our sales pipeline is captured is different than where our membership data is captured, is different than where our complaints are captured, which is separate than our 20 plus modules of Epic. In all of these, our challenge is always how do you link data between systems, and every question we get is not siloed to one area. So we'll get a question like, what members that have had a lagging referral ended up in the ED at an outside hospital? And so that requires us to go to the claim system, the membership system, the referral system, ED specific reports. So we have to tie together 5 different types of systems and data in that situation to be able to answer that question. It's a fair business question, but to be able to answer it, we've got to tie that data together. So in our organization, we have member record number and health record number, and they're not, how they're structured in every one of those systems is different. So we don't have this world-class architecture that starts from the core that actually says, okay, every system is going to have member and is going to have this structure for member, and then that's how you link it up. So whenever we have a project, we have to figure out how we link that encounter or that specific bill or that specific person between those. So the techniques we use, first we got to find it, and then we have to do testing, structuring. Probably our most robust system, we have a star schema dimensional model. So we use common dimensions. So we'll have a patient dimension, we'll have a provider dimension, we'll have a location dimension, we'll have a date dimension. And so every fact, and facts are the amounts or count. So number of visits, number of labs, number of dollars, those are all facts, anything that's an amount or count. But then we try to make all of those dimensions common, because those are the things that tie together. So the question will always change. What was the number of ED visits? What was the dollar of that ED visits? What was the what was the location? So all of those by location, by provider, by referral, those are all become the dimensions. So we try to structure those similarly so that the facts that are built in the middle can be reused to those dimensional structures. So that's one technique we use. Some of it's brute force. Hey, does anybody know anything about this? Can you come help me do it? Certainly we're trying to do more enterprise-wide at Kaiser to try to do a lot of that structuring. So we have a movement right now more to enterprise data marts or warehouses, where we used to just have a membership set of tables from membership of the Northwest. We had a set of tables on claims for the Northwest. Now we have a claims data warehouse. So at the national level, all claims for the entire company are going into a claims data warehouse. All member records are going into the membership data warehouse. But those are so siloed. But it's better because at least there's a structure. So every region's not doing membership structuring on its own. We now have a place to go get it, but it's still not that cross-functional question that ties back to the data question. So a lot of different techniques depending on what we're trying to solve. If it's a data quality problem or a formatting, or we can get into a lot of detail there. But in general, that's kind of strategies we're employing to take care of that. That answer your question?
It does. Actually, I have one follow-up.
Okay.
Do you use heuristics also?
Can you press the button?
Do you use heuristics also?
Heuristics. Can you tell me more about what heuristics is?
Basically, you analyze the data to figure out kind of what it is. It's sort of like, instead of like having a count, you
Right.
have program logic that algorithmically converts something that's fuzzy into something else.
Yeah, we have that. We have that probably more in some of the more advanced information analyst spaces, but most of the data mart or the data normalization I was talking about is more about the data as it exists. But certainly we've had some other places where we've had those more advanced techniques, or like text mining projects to try to take and draw out what do those words mean and quantifiable. So we've had some projects around that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to confirm. We use heuristics at Kaiser. They just don't call it that officially, but they do that. There are built-in features into SAS that helped with some of those text mining things, and they are precisely using heuristics in some of those functions. So,
I had just something to add, which kind of related to one of the earlier examples, which is having a range of different analysts and approaches is really important in a place like Kaiser, because a lot of the systems there is no grand plan on the architecture. We try and do stuff. So understanding where it's good to be flexible and where it's good not to be, and where you need to, we deal with this on every single project. And there's elements, I think, of all of it in how, because the least or the most flexible is an analyst working on an ad hoc. They work with a customer, they have a need, they'll go in, they'll extract information, they'll do something with it and deliver it. And that's probably the kind of the sharp end of if we have a pipeline. But as we move back, that could turn then into something they want more regularly, and there's other people want to do it, so we would collect more information. And ultimately, the back end, it may be that it ends up being a full self-service Cognos product. that might take us 5 years to get through that. And at each time, we're really kind of weighing up the costs against what it's going to take, what the value is, to say, is this really big enough? And we get a lot more demand than we can deal with, so there's a lot of noise in the system, there's a lot of requests for stuff, so managing through that process is really kind of important. And we tried things and went down various avenues and found that it didn't work for whatever, because it wasn't the right mix for whatever we needed. But dealing with that, is really important in terms of something we do on a daily basis, trying to kind of just weigh up what's a good, appropriate solution around a scope for a particular need. So, sorry, that was more of a general response.
I've done some work with Kaiser's Center for Health Research, CHR, and do you interact with them? Are your data marts and tools available to CHR, and do they utilize them to answer the research questions, and vice versa? If they've got things that they're developing to answer specific research questions, is that something that your team would have availability to, or are they pretty siloed?
I'll give a general comment and I'll maybe pass to these guys. So clearly they're sourcing from the same systems. There's a key difference is CHR is the whole program. By that we mean all Kaiser regions. We're just the Northwest. The timeliness of the information, the needs are different. So CHR's data is going to be more out of date, but they have probably more rigorous processes all around some of the aspects of the data they're collecting. So the underlying source data is the same, but if we're refreshing next day, they're refreshing, and their needs are not necessarily to have information coming in next day. They just update it monthly or quarterly for studies and things. But the analysts working there, and we do have movement with analysts between the kind of more operational side and CHR. Certainly when we get down to what we would call business rules, which is more understanding the rules you need to apply to the underlying source systems to actually come up with those metrics. And a lot of that has to do with understanding how the information is entered on the kind of front end. There is certainly cross sharing of ideas there, and the community more broadly. There is overlap, but I'm going to give it to the analyst to give maybe some more specific. Oh, you have one? Yeah.
Yes, so actually with the cancer care oversight that I've been working analytically, CHR has actually come in, and also they're the other analytical support on that actually. And so we've been building more and more collaboration between the teams, and we do send data back and forth and are actually partnering to develop a lot of these metrics for each of these. I mean, we have a cancer task force for almost every cancer that we're working through in terms of how to make this more timely and how to get better care to the patients, and reviewing the whole process top to bottom. And CHR is along for the ride, and so I'm actually in touch with them a lot.
I'll add to that. For clinical quality side, we also collaborate with CHR. They do a lot of impact evaluations for us for disease-based case management, like for our diabetes case management, whether the intervention is effective or not to the patient, whether we bring down their A1C value or not. So they do some evaluations for us in terms of the clinical quality part. They also involve, I think they develop some risk scores for the members to predict who are in risk of a certain disease. And that's one of other analysts is actually helping CHR bring that model into the operational side. So they're actually nurses and pharmacists, they're using that score to see who are at risk for certain diseases, and that's really helpful. So there's more and more collaboration between CHR and operational side of the work in Kaiser.
This might be a question for you both, based on what you just said, or it could be the whole panel, but we've been having a seminar that's focused on electronic health records and genomic data in terms of precision medicine, and I'm thinking about the cancer clinical care and the clinical oncology pieces. How often are you, if at all, leveraging either in risk calculations or in trying to answer questions, either genomic assays that might be done, and this could be something just like BRCA, or any genetic information?
I'm not sure about genetic information, but I know like in other regions of Kaiser, they do use genetic information to do a lot of research. Northern California do a lot of research. I'm not sure this region.
And that could be something maybe that them at CHR they may do as a specific, I mean, those types of specific questions are more likely to be with CHR or I guess potentially the Californians. We just don't have the resources, and our focus is a little bit more operational. But certainly the model that I talked about earlier in terms of the cohort tool, that in theory, if we have some kind of genomic marker that we could add in, that it could be used on the operational side, that would potentially be how the organization would go about and do it. But it would be, okay, do we find this, where can we find this information? Yeah, we've got a data source. Yeah, we can kind of plumb it into what we're working with, and it will allow us then to use that as one of the criteria in terms of going and driving more of the care delivery side of that rather than the research side. If it's going to be more of a research type question, the whole resourcing or model, our operational model isn't really structured around that. It's much more, get a little bit more tactical.
Although you could argue that there's a lot of things that we'd love to know just from the data in terms of quality of care, payer, payee information that are strictly just pure analytics. It could be business analytics, depending on how you do it. Just in terms of the assay. So it doesn't even have to be the result, but it just be, are these being ordered routinely? Those types of questions.
Absolutely, and those can be the types of things, and really that's, sorry, I guess it's not getting recorded.
We periodically have questions on things just like that. Looking, I know on the surgical services side, often they're looking at what was ordered for the surgery, both from maybe a consistency perspective to make sure that we're being covered on all bases with each operation that happens, but maybe on a cost level or efficiency level of some kind. So they do look at information like that to try to improve either the quality of care or the cost of the care, or maybe even where we're doing the care and how that affects our patient availability to the service, or the cost of doing that to lower the cost to our patients.
One more, because these are all related to things we're talking about. So we struggle a lot across the board in how we represent and present uncertainty. And so there are aspects of the data that are very trustworthy, and there are aspects that are not. And I'm curious if the strategy is more, cut and run in terms of just presenting the data that's the most confident, or if you are presenting data in which the temporal piece that you mentioned dovetails really nicely into this. How do you handle that? And I realize this might change depending on who the client or customer is, but I'm just curious about general strategies.
I think I'll take that first, and then I'd like June to follow up on it. She's probably close to this. If it's about quality of the patient care, administering a drug, administering a procedure, we absolutely have to be 100% on that information. If it's about directionally correct with operations, or financial trends or performance trends, Keith and I talk about it's good enough, right? So I think that claims data for us is also 3 months lag, because there's up to 3 months to pay a claim. So anything done outside of our walls, certainly we're like, well, what's represented on a claim bill is not the same that's represented in our electronic medical record internally, so there's a difference there. But if it's, I think the closer you get to that spectrum of delivering something to a patient, the closer you get to it has to be 100%. If it's, and it also depends on the type of request. If the request is like, I wonder kind of how we're doing with orders. Okay, well, what do you want to know? How many orders are done, kind of by location, by physician? Okay, here's your first cut, right? If that request turns into, oh, hey, we're going to start basing physician compensation on how many are actually presenting the order patterns of, okay, now we have to be a little bit more specific, because now we're basing physician performance metrics and payment on. So it kind of depends on the nature of the request and the focus of it, but certainly I think there's a spectrum between it's directionally correct, it's good enough, ad hoc, and then the other end of someone's life safety end of it too. So that's how I'd answer. But June might have, she's closer to.
Yeah, just add in more a little bit about clinical quality part. I do pull a lot of data for our prevention team to outreach patients. So they do need very accurate data to speak to the members. What we do is I pull the data, and then I personally sometimes check in the front end of the data if they are accurate or not, just randomly check. And then the MAs, before they outreach to the patients, they also pull up their electronic records, double check, and before they outreach to the patient, they study their medical records thoroughly and identify care gaps and intervention that need to be done. So that's has been so far been really good. So
I have a quick general. I just have a general comment. This kind of goes back to the heuristics question, in that it sometimes depends upon how you got your data or how you got to the conclusion. If it's a matter of confidence and fuzziness, what decision are you willing to make on that type of data? So we have all types of data in DIME that we work with. So I think on a case-by-case basis, you definitely want to look at what type of data is this. If you're looking at heuristics, it's only going to be as good as your model. So maybe I blatantly missed a variable in my model, and I think I'm really confident, and I could say, hey, we're 100 or 99 or whatever the number is. We got to be careful there. So.
And I would just add, with business partners, my view is always all the data is wrong. It's just a matter of degree, because we don't get 100% accuracy anywhere. So, and the relatives, exactly as Allison said, it really depends on the question you're asking. Having said that, certainly what we're trying to do, and it really helps having analysts covering different parts of the organization, is certainly when we go in on the information analyst side to begin with, we do want to get to a point, and I think the RTMC example is a great one with Sean, which is we're going to do quite a lot of upfront validation, because of the other thing is on the other side of Epic, people just assume if it goes in that we have this magic wand and we just go into this database that has questions and we find the answer and pull the numbers out. They don't seem to really understand that it's a real partnership, and I think I use the language a lot around it's your data, it's not our data. So, and it's only what you put into the system, and we have to work together to find a way to get that information out. And I think more importantly, and I think the RTMC is and I'll get off my soapbox, but a great example is once we get folks on the front end to really consider what it is they want to use as the secondary use of information in terms of maybe driving a lot of the other things they want to do, then it gets really powerful, because then we start designing the workflows really to allow us much better quality data on the back end. And that's where it's like, well, we don't want 5 different ways to do it, but that can be difficult when you're trying to get uptake on using the front-end system to begin with, where people don't want to necessarily change their processes. So it's a balance, but I think if you can close that loop and really have that partnership exercise, it starts those things. It's by no means easy, and it takes a huge amount of time, but it's really, really important.
Probably something related. Where you do you have anything going on with like vital signs data from the chart itself, like tabular data from either devices or, let's say, meds, dosage, or dosing, which is usually pretty accurate, and things which are acquired from systems or devices which are pretty much accurate sources?
Do you want to talk about some of the range of stuff that you have to
Sure. We do have, there's pharmacy data, lab data, there's dosage and their units, their way of, whether it's oral, infusion, and way of taking, and also lab data from outside, external Kaiser. And so there are some part when MAs, medical assistant, go on site to the employer groups, they do measure their basic metrics like blood pressure. Sometimes they also do A1C test on the site, so they do have some kind of device to use, and then when they come back, and those data can be synced into the system. So that's it's already in use, in operation. Does that answer your question?
Sure. So what tools are you using? I mean, are you using a standard tools or something different? Or
There's
I mean,
some apps in either the iPad or something. I'm not totally sure, but I do know that they do use iPad, and there's some apps to use.
Do you mean tools to automate the input of the data or the extraction?
No, to actually do like outcomes work with it to see exactly what the analytics of that. I mean, basically seeing the outcomes and mapping it to what the source data was and seeing if doing A is a better option than doing B or something like that. A much higher level view, I think.
So you're looking at like testing the effectiveness of interventions.
Probably either interventions or even
or protocols.
Protocols, exactly,
right.
Exactly, and even things like patient, the acuity of the patient at any given time from those metrics which you can get, which are pretty precise as far as like vital signs, I'd say, which have very specific.
There are. So some of the applications, so one of the systems that was actually put together and we mine the data on the back end is something called the patient support tool. So this is taking a snapshot of a whole number of different potentially lab values, but it could be health status assessments, again, individual patients, and this is used by primary care doctors to actually, it comes up with an overall gap score that allows them to actually manage outreach and how they manage their panels. And so that's updated every day, but it has a lot of that detail in there. Structuring those questions into more thoughtful and rigorous scientific assessments of interventions or things is probably more likely to be a little bit more on the CHR side rather than on the operational side. I think it's an area where we could certainly do a lot better, which is how we assess evidence. There's a lot of demand for data in Kaiser. How much of that really drives sensible decision making is a big debate, but it's like if we know what it is, we get asked for a lot of dashboards, a lot of metrics, and it's like, well, what are you going to do differently? It's like looking at these things will not change them, but it's a good start, and I think rigor around that. But you get to a certain point, then you've got to dig real down to the detailed, actionable information and say, well, what's actually going to change this? And that's certainly some of the work that June's very closely involved with is doing that, and it happens in lots of different areas. But and I will just make one other comment on even out of automated systems, there's still big problems with the data because there's metadata, there's other things, there's things you have to take into just because it comes out of an automated system. Don't just assume the data is good because that can be dangerous too. But
yeah, there are also models built behind the tools to calculate risk score, like Framingham risk score is calculated to see if patient have heart risk. And there's also other LACE score calculated based on certain model to predict when patient discharged out of the hospital, how likely they will come back to the hospital. So things like that.
Do you capture any patient-generated data, like if patients do home blood pressure monitoring or blood sugar monitoring, or do you have any plans to try to integrate that more into the system, patient reporting on what medications they actually use, et cetera, that might make the data a little bit more meaningful?
Press the button. Take a repeat. You can just summarize your question. Okay. It was red.
okay.
Are we good to answer? I just went to the virtual care summit for Kaiser recently, and there's a lot of work being done in that area. There's an entire group dedicated, and they're talking about funding and resourcing. I don't know the exact numbers about how many people are out there that we service, but we have a lot of equipment out in the field that it's on demand. If a call comes into the center, we have to send an EMT or a home health nurse, whatever it is, and whatever equipment they might have. We're capturing data. We actually have a live video feed in some cases that we're working with. So there's some very exciting stuff that Kaiser is committed to working on in that area. I know that's coming down the pipe.
Along those lines, Kaiser has one of the largest uses of the Epic MyChart patient portal, and is integrated fully with Epic in that regard, and doing patient engagement for much of that work.
Yeah, I can comment one more thing there. On MyChart, National Kaiser is releasing the integrated video visits for the Northwest region right now. So in the very near future, as a member of Kaiser, you could actually, certain types of visits, we're rolling it out little by little for departments and areas. But you'd be able to actually have a visit with your doctor online, and that's because of the MyChart. It comes through the MyChart.
Yeah, hi. Say, you were talking about the wonderful things that you can do with the data, and that just kind of brings to my mind the question about, do you have any kind of a process that you use to do anything like functional decomposition of your processes to like quantify the activities that are performed at Kaiser to perhaps maybe optimize them or reduce duplications? In other words, do you have like a BPM or do you use Bebel or anything like that?
Yeah, there's certainly a BPM method or multiple versions of that. I think that a lot of that there'll be pilots in a region, and then when there's success, they'll roll it out into other regions. So we probably kind of have an organic interaction with that as it goes in. So like the RTMC work, that there might be the actual application person changing the application, the upfront process inputs, where there's variation. Then Sean's involved from how are we going to use this data on the back end, or secondary users that aren't in that process but need the same information. So there's a lot of that goes on. I think where we're, as an organization, we're not consistent in what that technique looks like, but we've got Six Sigma, BPM, depending on what works in a different region. Southern Cal uses a completely different thing than Northern Cal, but it seems to work for both of them. But I think as an organization, we're getting better. We have a one Kaiser motto now, that when something works somewhere, let's spread it. So last year for us, we did all of the financial performance reporting for Northwest. We were deemed the best in the program. So we extended that to Colorado. So Colorado just adopted what we did straight out of the box. We're adopting now reporting that was done in California, some crystal reports out of the box functionality. We're bringing that now to the Northwest because it had a model in California that works. So we try to leverage those processes within analytics and data, and certainly operations does that too. So there's models. RTMC exists in our region because it was done in Southern Cal and worked, and now every region has an RTMC focus. So it happens, but I don't think as a program overall we have one method, but I think there's multiple flavors of the same kind of emphasis, what you're talking about.
Hi, you mentioned rapid development cycle method. I think it was in relation to Treehouse. Can you talk about that and what problem you're trying to solve, and how's that different than your typical development cycle?
I'll give a general comment and then I'll hand it over to this was just an idea that I guess it's a big struggle in Kaiser, and I know Allison will agree with this, is there's a lot of great ideas around, but you're trying to turn those ideas into things that are actually workable, that are achievable in the context of very limited resources in a kind of on the margin, because we've got all this other stuff we have to do. And so we've tried different ways of doing things in terms of saying, let's try and map out the organization and do the real long term, and then we found you only need to get a few bits wrong, and actually the maintenance of those things can be really difficult. And so this was just just through the bureaucracy of the whole thing, as just let's focus it down and see what we can do in a week. And I'll pass over to these guys, but I think it's very complex, and it kind of relates to the last question, which is just create a space where you can make some progress, create some value, and move things forward is kind of the process we have to use, rather than kind of grander plans on, this is how we could do stuff. It just gets choked for a whole number of different reasons, and that's just the environment we have to work in.
Yeah, I could comment a little bit too on Treehouse. One thing was we wanted to have the option to fail fast, so we didn't want to have a 3-month project or whatever it was in the standard way that we used to do things. So at first it was kind of said we're going to have a little hackathon, but it wasn't that. But the best way to characterize it was a rapid dev cycle. So there was actually a lot of pre-work that was done. So we were slated to have a 1 week of work. What it turned out to be in the Kaiser environment was that a lot of the work happened before the week. That was a lot needed to take place. What we chose to leave in the week was ambiguous at first, and then we found out, whoa, we should have actually done a little bit more before this because we don't have what we need to be able to do what we need to do. So we learned a lot through it. We got done what we needed to do, and we have continuing work efforts that came from that helped because we failed fast in some areas and succeeded as well.
This is new. We're testing out this rapid work. It's just for a group of people can get out of their normal routine work and just focus on. We actually logged in one room for a week and just to be able to focus on one specific project. So it's actually very a good experience for us to have that, and likely will be used for more projects.
I just wanted to say also for this kind of rapid thing, one of the key elements, as far as I understood, was to pull in representatives from the business, from the data side, from all the aspects, so that when you're having the questions in that room, you're getting a quick response and turnover in that process.
So my question is about Tableau. So can you talk a bit about the experience using Tableau in your organization? Have you created any dashboards, and how do you integrate those dashboards in your workflow? Okay. And also, how do you compare the interactive dashboards with the static reports generated in Cognos and other Crystal reports? So what is your experience with that?
I'll take that on because we're really just starting. Kaiser has kind of taken on Tableau, or the idea of Tableau. I think it's being used in a few small pockets. We have a specific project in our department to answer some of those questions, which is running this year, which is, well, how does it really sit against things like SAS and Cognos, our existing tools? We're just using it pretty much as a standalone tool, but also seeing we have kind of tests within that project. So one of them is to say, rather than analysts spend a lot of time reanalyzing what I would call analytical data sets, which is, if you think about the example of the population health, all of these different measures of patients, then understanding the data sources, understanding the business rules to be able to represent those things takes a lot of work. But just reanalyzing that table and summarizing it, analysts can do, but isn't necessarily high-value work. And so that's part of the reason that Treehouse came about. But with that example, one other way that we're going, which is we don't always have the resources to build those things, is if we give that analytical data set to an end user and a tool like Tableau, is it useful? Because sometimes we have kind of power users that have a very specific focus, but they're not great in number. We can't necessarily justify building a big project, so that may be a way of doing it. We're also looking at how analysts can use it as an analytical tool, but as an analyst as opposed to an end user, and what are the benefits there. It's a kind of different thought process. Certainly if you're in SaaS and you've got to code stuff, it's a different mindset to actually saying, right now I'm going to analyze the problem. So what is it these people are trying to do? What am I trying to do? How am I kind of trying to create value? So we're exploring how we can actually do that as well as visualization. But we may look and say, well, look, we could set this up in Tableau, but we already have Cognos, and so we could use it as a prototyping tool as well. But that's kind of early stages. I don't think we've done that much more at the moment.
I have a quick comment. Sorry. Some of the tension out there right now that I've seen in organizations like Kaiser as well with Tableau is a lot of investment's been done in the BI space with dimensionally modeled data, and Tableau you can create an awesome dashboard that looks beautiful really quick, and it'd be quite impressive to the people you're delivering it to. Trying to get that done on a data source that's dimensionally modeled will cause some pain because you're likely going to have to do a lot of rework that you've already done and heavily invested in other areas. You can easily put Tableau on top of a relational data set and utilize all the work that was done building your relational data source. So there are other consulting companies out there that are working on what they call data connectors from Tableau to be able to try to utilize more of the BI information that's already done. And so in our case, it would be nice if we could just point to Cognos and use it as is, but we can't. So for us, we've got to do it as a one-off. Like Keith was saying, we've got to pick and choose how we use Tableau.
So we have time for one more quick question. It's already here. Yeah. I mean, we have a level 2 analyst that's in the strategic leadership meeting, talk about the dashboard metrics. So it's already here. I think that the user sophistication using the tools still has to catch up. So we still have a culture of, I want to email to me. I'm like, oh, wait, there's all this other, you're not going to get all this functionality that comes with it. So there's still this adoption trajectory that has to happen. And I think that because there's so much information, it's not always clear what's correct or what the underlying definition is. We still want to do that. That makes it a lot easier to change the...
And a lot of that will happen, certainly with information analysts, if they've hopefully got a good working relationship with their business partners, they'll get involved and engaged. But a lot of the time it's just managing demand, though. It's like prioritization is a big issue for our organization. We want to do everything everywhere. And so we really feel that, certainly because we get a lot more demands on us than we can deliver. So as part of it is trying to work out what the bigger themes are, linking those themes together, reducing duplication, but also then creating enough of a space where we can do some of the more potentially long-term strategic value-adding work, a lot of the more multivariate, exploratory type work, predictive type work. But certainly as resource managers, it's really tough because it's like you want all this other stuff, and there is too much information in the organization, or too much data in the organization. Every initiative wants a dashboard, and it's like, well, slow down. What is it you're trying to do here? But I think some of that is just they want to explore, and that's the only way they know of doing it, is just give me a kind of dashboard and stuff. So I think just generally on the customer side, it's early days. We are but we're a long way off being an analytically driven organization. So
I just wanted to add, sitting in a meeting to run a report, we design our reports that would be used in a meeting like that to be very user-friendly, a lot of information, and having the business partners involved in the development of those designs of those reports. So they're very fluent in running any productional kind of report in a meeting. And because the questions are coming from them, they're often more knowledgeable about the selections they want to make and how they want to see that data coming out. The ad hoc questions in those meetings really can only be sort of a collecting of what are your ideas and then running that back through all these processes we've talked about to get the data to a place that's going to answer the questions or give the actionable information that they're looking for. So analysts often will sit in on a conversation where you're trying to understand what they're trying to look at. But to just pull up information on the fly when you're in the meeting, there's usually a lot of questions that need to get answered before you can kind of pull that data together in the right way. So I don't know if that helps, but there's kind of that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that
And they do. And that's true. A lot of the ideas of how we put these MARTs together for Cognos is so that we have sort of one answer to a question. So if we have a measure in there, it's got a definition. We have a definition written down that's been communicated out to the users. So it is a little more advanced person that's going to use that sort of drag and drop to create on-the-fly reporting. But it's much better than them trying to go out and attach all these databases together to get their answer. So there's different levels of sophistication, and our users are at those different levels depending.
That's a great way to summarize it, Karen. And I think the Tableau question before related to that, because everybody's like, oh, I can just create all this stuff, but they bring down the database because their queries are poorly written. They don't know what they're actually presenting. They don't know how to link up. They don't. So there's danger in that, but certainly the appetite is there, and so the more we can structure these different tiers of things for people, the better will allow them. And Cognos BI is self-service, so if you have a chance, look at it. But it's got a lot of functionality Tableau has. Some of it's not as slick or easy, but certainly we can kind of stand behind it and say we've structured the data in a way that you can't really make a mistake in reports, right? But you can drill through, you can drill across, you can, yeah.
Sometimes I think people use it as a way, some kind of bullet or something. I don't know what it is. I think good analytical people can use a range of techniques and they can be fine because they'll build in the fact that just because you find something that assumes it's right. But I think just generally on the education side, the consumption of the information in the healthcare is just so complex, so varied, with so many questions. It's a huge challenge, I think. It's in business.
So I think we're out of time.
We are, so I want if everyone could join me in thanking the Kaiser Dining Group. This is fantastic. And if you didn't get a handout, they are up front, and we will be posting them for those online on the web as well.
And we do have multiple positions open. We always seem to have new things open from people getting promotions or different roles. And our how to find a job is listed at the bottom of the sheet, so take a look at it if you're looking for a job. Thank you.